Hello, friends and critters alike. Welcome to the very much asked for comparison videos for the Tal'Dorei Campaign guide. We have the original version and the Reborn version. And while I do plan on covering the rest of the Tal'Dorei Campaign Reborn setting, stuff that's new, many of you are asking to compare and contrast what was updated from the original version that was put out almost 5 years ago. So I thought we'd start with the first subclass that was introduced in that book originally, which was the Blood Domain Cleric. Very interesting concept, and I want to see how much has changed as game balance has gone on versus if anything has changed at all. Also, for those of you watching, I hope you're enjoying Legends of Vox Machina, the animated series. I mean, I was a fan of the original campaign and watched all that stuff happen live, so it's awesome to see it happen in animated form, and I'm actually getting my friends into it as well because it's just really well produced. Also, 90.8K, let's try to bump that to 91, and then from there to 100. All right, that's enough of that. We will go ahead and dive in. So, right-hand side, classic Tal'Dorei campaign setting, left-hand side, Reborn. Okay, so let's start off with the domain spells. That's probably the best place to start, which again, as a cleric, you're going to get your extra 10 spells. So at first level, we had Sleep and Ray of Sickness. That has been changed to False Life and Sleep. I guess I can kind of see that the sort of bolstering ability of the temporary hit points kind of fits the blood domain. Then we had Ray of Enfeeblement and Crown of Madness. I'm very happy to see Crown of Madness dropped. I'm actually just not a big fan of that spell personally, in favor of Hold Person, which is a very useful spell. So Hold Person, Ray of Enfeeblement. Haste and Slow remain the same. Blight and Stone Skin the same. And Dominate Person and Hold Monster. So just a couple of changes early on. But again, the concept of, almost, it makes me think of bloodbending, Avatar style. Avatar happens to be the shirt I'm wearing today. But, holding someone in place by having access to their blood. Okay, so let's move into the first level features. Proficiency with martial weapons, that's the same. Then we have this bloodletting focus, which originally was basically the antithesis of the life domain cleric. If you're familiar with the life domain cleric from the player's handbook, whenever you would cast a healing spell and someone would benefit from that healing, they would take additional or gain additional healing and hit points equal to 2 plus that spell's level. The bloodletting focus is sort of, again, the opposite of that. When you cast a spell at first level that inflicts damage to a creature, they would take additional damage equal to 2 plus the spell's level, and that remains exactly the same, and I actually really like that. I think it's an interesting take on flipping the script on that, which could, in theory, lead to an entire way where you could build sort of anti-classes, which could be a fun experiment for someone who has the time to go ahead and build that kind of homebrew stuff, where you look at the existing classes that have a certain kind of feature. I know we have a War Domain Cleric, but that's very old, and it's old school from the player's handbook. The Peace Domain Cleric is phenomenal. It's one of the best healing support clerics out there. Taking that Peace Domain and turning it into a War Domain could be very interesting, and using the opposite of that. Anyway, so we had Channel Divinity, which was originally called Blood Puppet. It seems to have been changed to Crimson Bond. But what it did was, as an action, target a larger, smaller creature within 60 feet. They make a con save against your spell save DC, or immediately move up to half of their movement speed in a direction of your choice, making a single weapon attack against a creature of your choice within range. And then it didn't work on, so dead or unconscious creatures automatically fail, and then at 8th level you could target a huge or smaller creature. As you can see here, the wording has been significantly upgraded, although Blood Puppet does appear to now be your 6th level ability, and Crimson Bond, which was your 6th level ability, is now your 2nd level. So they did a little swap, and we'll compare them, but let's see what the new 2nd level is. Crimson Bond, let's see. You can make a supernatural bond with a creature you can see, or which you have a blood sample of. The bond lasts for an hour or until your concentration is broken, as though concentrating on a spell. While the bond is in effect, you can use an action to learn the target's approximate distance and direction from you, as well as its current hit points, any conditions affecting it, as long as the target is within... approximate distance from you, as well as its current hit points and conditions, as long as it's within 10 miles of you. Alternatively, you can use your action to attempt to connect with the target's senses. You take 2d6 necrotic damage yourself, and they make a con save against your spell save DC. On a success, the bond ends. On a failure, you can choose to either see or hear through their senses for a number of minutes equal to your wisdom modifier, minimum of 1 minute. You are blinded indefinitely, as those typical, peering through other people's sights usually blinds your body itself. When the concentration ends, the bond is lost. Regardless of the outcome, the target feels a wave of unease pass over it when it makes this save. So let's go ahead and go to the Crimson Bond in the original feature. We'll see how much difference is there. It says you to focus on a sample of blood from a creature that is at least 2 ounces and has been spilt no longer than a week ago. They obviously got rid of that, and I'm okay with that. That was a very specific thing that seemed kind of unnecessary. As an action, you can focus on the blood of the creature to form a bond and gain information. You know their approximate distance, direction, general state of health, as long as they're within 10 miles. Rather than the general state of health, which is a very vague term that doesn't really fit into the design of Dungeons & Dragons, they changed it to now be their current hit points and conditions affecting them. I appreciate that. That does make things a little bit easier. Okay. You can maintain this effect as long as you are concentrating on it, as though you are concentrating on a spell for up to 1 hour. That's the same. You can spend an action to attempt to see through it. They make a con save. If they succeed, the connection is resisted, ending the bond. You suffer 2d6 necrotic damage. I like that they changed it. You take the damage first. That makes more sense. Upon a failed saving throw, you can choose to see through their eyes or ears. Wisdom modifier, number of rounds. During this time, you're blind or deaf. Once it ends, it is lost. Okay, so that's pretty much the same. Then again, the newer version here is Blood Puppet. So I want to go back and compare the level 6 Blood Puppet to the original level 2 Blood Puppet. It is still an action. It is still larger, smaller, within 60 feet. Originally, it was a Constitution saving throw. It is now a Wisdom saving throw. And let's see. Again, it was their spell save DC. Previously, they would just move and make an attack at a creature of your choice. They are now considered to be charmed by you, which makes sense for the Wisdom saving throw. An unconscious creature automatically fails that saving throw and isn't incapacitated while you control its action. So you can move around a sleeping or unconscious creature. A corpse affected by this gains a semblance of life. So you can pick up a corpse, have a corpse do things. And then you have a couple things you can do with it rather than just move half its movement speed and attack. Once on the affected creature or animated corpse turn, you can command it, no action required, to move up to half its speed and use one of the following actions. Interact with an object, make a single attack, or do nothing. I will note that it also says make a single attack. That could be a spell attack in theory. Originally it was a melee attack, a single weapon attack in the original one. It is now just a single attack. An animated corpse or unconscious creature takes its turn immediately after yours, but can't move or take actions unless you command it to do so. Its statistics are the same as when it was alive or conscious. An affected living creature makes a new saving throw at the end of each of its turn, ending the effects. For any target you control, your control lasts for a minute or until your concentration is broken. And then they have here, which is really at 8th level, you can control huge creatures. That is now 17th level. So a little bit more balance there. All right, Sanguine Recall was originally an 8th level ability in place of Divine Strike or kind of empowered cantrips, which is something I've always said when people try to break away from that relatively established thing of you either get bonus damage to your physical attacks or bonus damage to your cantrips. So Sanguine Recall, again, was originally an 8th level ability, and it was as an action. You recover spell slots that you have that have a combined level equal to or less than half your Cleric level rounded up, and none of the slots can be 6th level or higher. You immediately suffer a d6 damage per spell slot recovered. You can't use this feature until you finish a long rest, and then they give us an example. For example, if you're an 8th level Cleric, you can recover up to 4 levels of spell slots. You can recover a single 4th, 2 second, a 3rd and a 1st, or 4 first level. you then suffer 46 damage. Now, this is similar to a wizard's arcane recovery, but this happens as an action as opposed to as part of a short rest. Now that has also been an additional in the new version added to 6th level. Seems to be relatively the same though. You take a d8 necrotic damage for each spell slot you recover, as opposed to a d6. But it also adds in here that it can't be reduced in any way. Reading it originally there, it didn't matter if you had resistance to necrotic damage. You could still take the reduced damage, so it would really make a lot of sense to be something like a Shatterkai or an Azamar. But now that damage can't be reduced in any way. So this feature remains largely the same, just a little bit more damage output to you, and you take more damage overall. They also did, though, however, follow in the original footsteps of the player's handbook and add in Divine Strike as your 8th level ability, which does an extra d8 necrotic damage, and then at 14th that goes up to 2d8. And then we have both at level 17 Vascular Corruption Aura. Originally, this was an aura emanates from you out to 30 feet that pulses necrotic energy through the veins of nearby foes, causing them to burst and bleed. For 1 minute, any enemy creature with blood that begins their turn within the aura or enters it the first time on their turn immediately suffer 2d6 necrotic damage. Any enemy creature with blood that will regain hit points while within the aura only regains half of the intended hit points rounded up, and that's once per long rest. Now, this is, I think, pretty much the same. For 1 minute, any hostile creature is in action within 30 feet. Oh, it's now 3d6 necrotic damage as opposed to 2d6. If a hostile creature with blood regains hit points within the aura, it only gets half, and it is once per long rest. So overall, I think this is better. Oh, and I forgot that there was this table here for the general state of it would give you kind of a different terminology. Like if they were untouched and had 100% hit points, they would be qualified as untouched versus injured, heavily wounded, unconscious, or dying, or dead. I like that it's flat out just mechanically giving you conditions that affect them and hit point totals. So I'd say I don't really see too much of a change. I do think it is more in line with the current balance. Couple shifts to some of the spells, swapping some of the abilities, the Crimson Bond ability of kind of being able to almost function like a Find Familiar and stuff like that. I think that does make more sense to have that being earlier on, as opposed to the Blood Puppet. Seems like a little bit more of a powerful ability. I like the separation of Sanguine Recall from 8th level to allow Divine Strike to make a presence, which does work out well, especially because you do have martial weapon proficiency. And then Vascular Corruption Aura, I feel like that is maybe the life domain thing, or there's at least one class in the player's handbook that has a similar thing where they emit light and it can like help or heal people, and this one does damage, again sort of fitting into that anti-class concept that I was talking about. So let me know what you guys think of this comparison of the Blood Domain. What do you think? Do you like the Blood Domain? I don't know if I'd ever play one. I think Matt used one as an NPC in one of the campaigns, and I think this whole concept of keeping the blood samples and all that stuff does make for a very good and interesting NPC character. So I do appreciate it from that perspective, but I don't know if I'd have the interest to actually play it when I do feel, as someone who loves to play clerics, there are a lot better options out there for me. So be sure to stay tuned to the channel here as I will continue to go through and do comparisons for the couple of reprinted subclasses that we have in the Tal'Dorei Campaign setting Reborn, as well as going through and covering things like feats and checking the vestiges of divergence and so on. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will see you all next time.